Hey everyone, and a huge welcome to all the law students and scholars joining us. You're tuned in to our official online explainer module for constitutional law, or as we call it in Indonesia, Hukum Tata Negara, usually just abbreviated to HTN. I am so excited to guide you through this today. We're going to be diving deep into the foundations and basic theories of HTN, specifically looking at how it intersects with other major state sciences. So let's jump right in, because getting a grip on these intersections is an absolute must for anyone serious about studying law.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the foundations of constitutional law. Then we'll map out how it connects to state science and political science. After that, we'll tackle the static versus dynamic debate with administrative law, and finally wrap things up with our conclusion and bibliography.
Okay, let's get straight to it with Section 1, Foundations of Constitutional Law.
Think about it like building a house. You wouldn't just start nailing boards together without a blueprint, right? Well, constitutional law is essentially the blueprint of a nation. As legal scholars like Mohat Kuznardi and Harmali Ibrahim point out, HTN is the set of positive legal rules that regulate how a state is organized. It sets up the institutions both horizontally and vertically. And critically, it dictates the baseline relationship between the state and you, the citizen, which includes fundamental human rights. So it's not some abstract idea. It's the concrete, structural rules of an actual existing country.
Moving right along to Section 2, let's look at HTN and state science, or Ilmu Negara. Now, there is a super clear divide here. State science is all about the abstract theory. It asks the big philosophical questions about the origin and the very nature of what a state is. Academically, it's called a Scienswissenschaft, the science of what is, theoretically speaking. On the flip side, constitutional law is your practical application. It's the specific, positive law happening in a real country right now. It's a normative Wissenschaft, a science of concrete norms and rules. You can't really walk into a courtroom and argue state science to solve a dispute, but you absolutely use constitutional law to do exactly that.
To really put this into perspective, listen to this take from scholars R. Kranenberg and Mohat Kuznardi. They argue that because state science investigates the fundamental origin and nature of a state, it literally serves as the essential introductory science. You kind of have to wrap your head around the abstract theory first, the whole why do states even exist question, before you can jump into the positive, concrete rules of HTN. So state science is your prerequisite, and constitutional law is the specialized application.
All right, Section 3. This is where things get really dynamic. Let's talk about HTN and political science. You have got to hear this analogy by Jay Barents. It's honestly brilliant. He says constitutional law is like the human skeleton, and political science is the flesh that wraps around it. Just picture that for a second. The skeleton is completely rigid, right? It gives you structure, it sets the absolute boundaries of the body. But a skeleton just sitting there doesn't move. It needs life. The flesh, which is the politics, is that dynamic human behavior. It's the movement. You literally need both to have a functioning body, or in our case, a functioning state.
Let's break that down just a bit more. Constitutional law is laser-focused on rules, how the state is organized, and strict legal procedures. But political science, that's all about power dynamics. Miriam Budiarjo, a highly respected scholar, defines political science as the study of the formation and division of power. So, the political behavior, the flesh, is constantly operating inside those rigid boundaries of the legal institutions, the skeleton. Politicians might always want to stretch the flesh, but the skeleton decides exactly how far they can pull.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, here is the big takeaway. Literally every law on the books is the product of a political process. It's driven by power dynamics and human decisions. But, and this is a huge but, that political desire has to be channeled through the strict legal procedures laid out by constitutional law. Politics brings the energy and the content, sure, but HTN provides the necessary boundaries and the ultimate legal validation to make it real.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, where we look at the static versus dynamic elements by bringing in state administrative law, or HAN.
Now, Van Vollenhoven came up with this incredibly famous duality that makes this so easy to understand. He called constitutional law staat in rust, which means the state at rest. It's the static structure. Think of it like a car just parked in the driveway. Administrative law, HAN, is staat in beweging, the state in motion. HTN builds the car, puts the engine in, and assigns the driver. But HAN is what happens when you actually put the key in the ignition, start the engine, and start driving down the road doing the daily work of the government.
Loggeman adds a really vital layer to this too. He points out the constitutional law is about fundamental competence and authority. It essentially asks, does this office legally have the right to exist on paper? Administrative law, however, is about the actual execution of those offices. It's the difference between legally holding an office and the real-world rules of how a government official actually uses that authority when interacting with the public.
To make this super concrete, Lajaman gave us 7 specific aspects of an office, or jabatan, in Han. If you're taking notes, definitely jot these down. 1. What offices actually exist? 2. Who creates them? 3. How are they staffed? 4. What are their daily functions? 5. What is their exact legal authority? 6. How do they relate to each other? And 7. What are the absolute limits of their power? That list right there, that is exactly what the state in motion looks like in daily administration.
All right, we are down to our final section, the conclusion and bibliography.
Just a quick formal reminder for everyone watching. This explainer was put together by the Online Legal Studies Material Development Team. It is an official online teaching material designed specifically to be an academic reference for your coursework. The theories we unpack today are the absolute foundation for everything else you'll study in this field.
And on that note, check out the bibliography on your screen right now. I highly encourage you to go track down these texts. You've got Mohammed Kusnardi, Miriam Budiarjo, Nimatul Huda, Bagir Manan, and Jimli Ashidiki. These are the heavy hitters. Engaging with their primary works is really going to help you flesh out the skeleton we just built today.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a really heavy question to chew on. Maybe debate it in your virtual classrooms. Think back to Barentz's metaphor. If constitutional law is the rigid, static skeleton and political science is the dynamic, ever-expanding flesh, what exactly happens to a nation's governance when the political flesh outgrows or completely breaks the legal skeleton? Ponder that one for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep asking the big questions, and I will see you in the next module.